As colleges and universities explore AI's role in student support, leaders must balance innovation with responsibility, trust, and institutional mission. Today, we have a wonderful panel of higher education leaders who will be discussing how institutions are incorporating AI to streamline support operations and enhance student-facing services while keeping the human experience at the center. So let's get started. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself, tell us about your background and your work. I'm going to throw it to Dave first.
Greetings. Hi, I'm Dave Weil, the Senior Vice President for Strategic Services and Initiatives at Ithaca College. My portfolio includes IT, analytics, HR, and artificial intelligence. So I have a kind of a broad portfolio there, but it really is about helping the institution from a strategic lens. And so we've been doing a lot of work related to analytics and AI and sort of the intersection of that. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of what we're doing with you all today.
Terrific. Karen, next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Stout. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Achieving the Dream. We support community colleges in building capacity to change the trajectory of the student experience into and through their colleges and then into the communities within which they live, with the premise that if students are successful and thriving, communities will be successful and thriving. We do a lot of capacity building work with our colleges, and so we really situate AI within that institutional transformation lens and speak to it within that context. So I'm excited about being part of today's conversation. I've been at Achieving the Dream for 11 years as the president and CEO. Prior to that, I was president of community college outside of Philadelphia for almost 15 years. And before that, a vice president that oversaw a lot of technology work. But I would say now most of my work in AI is really looking at how organizations, especially community colleges, are using AI to improve the student experience.
Terrific. And finally, Nicolette.
Hi, my name is Nicolette Miller from Arizona State University. I'm the Executive Director of Student Coaching Experience here at ASU and working with our student-facing teams supporting all of our online student population. So I have many years in higher ed, about a little over 23 years now, that I've been working in really student-facing support teams. And so really excited to talk about how we're taking a very human-centered approach and how we're innovating with AI, and excited to chat with you all today.
Great. So I thought we could start by talking about what's possible. And so where do you see the most potential for AI to improve student support and really positively impact students? Nicolette, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, so we have had such a tremendous amount of progress in terms of what we thought we would be using AI for a couple years ago to really to where we are now. And I think initially when everyone really started digging to AI, we thought, oh, well, this will be great. It will be this switch that will be flipped, and all of a sudden AI will do everything for us. But there's so many layers to it, and part of that is, how we are maintaining and establishing trust with our students. And so we've really focused on a few different things. So I think one is how do we create more self-service, external service tools for students, especially for some of the transactional pieces, to essentially sort of remove some of those barriers for quick questions or quick pieces of help that they might need. I think the other thing that we've used it for internally really is it's been an incredible tool for helping us map out processes and identify gaps in our processes where we can improve student outcomes. I've used it a ton around sort of data and qualitative analysis to help us identify trends early on and what we're seeing in the data for students. And then for our teams that are supporting students, we've used it quite a bit for creating internal tools to really increase the capacity of support that's available, that they're able to provide, and also really just creating resources and tools for our teams to help students at every step of their journey. So we've used it for many things, but most of it has been around improving our work and removing redundancy, and also being able to intuit needs earlier than we could previously.
I think that idea of, what you're actually doing with AI being not what you thought you would do with AI is super interesting, and we will touch on that later. But first, Karen, what kind of potential for AI are you excited about?
Well, I agree with Nicolette's description of removing friction within the student experience and the opportunities to use AI to do that, but also to gain insight into what the gaps might be in the student journey into and through the college. I think that using AI to help students to persist and belong and succeed, ideally that's what how we really want to center the use of AI. And I think there are kind of maybe 4 areas that ATD focuses in capacity building with our colleges. We don't go in saying AI is the way to do it, though. It is just, one of the ways that could be considered to move forward, making supports more proactive rather than reactive. So the more we know, we've done a lot of work in redesign the student experience around nudges, and trying to move students into the right path or the sequential path. AI can help us to do some prediction around that. Certainly expanding access to academic supports like tutoring, and embedding AI-enabled tutoring into systems and processes. I'm really excited about the potential for AI to help us to improve the student experience on the front end with career navigation, and connecting that career choice with economic mobility, and using AI to help students get access to that information early on, so that they know what the different pathways are, the wages that are associated with those pathways, what the next step might be, as community colleges start to become what I call more career matching organizations. Since so many of our students live and work in the communities within which we reside, they don't leave our areas. They're in our communities. 80% of community college graduates stay pretty much in the region of their community college. So those are, those are a couple of the areas that I see opportunities, not fully built out yet. I'd agree that we have aspirations that we're still, I think, struggling with in the shape and culture of our organizations to move forward. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about some of those issues as we have our conversation.
And Dave, how does that all align with the potential you're seeing?
Absolutely aligns. So Ithaca is a, small to mid-sized institution. We have about 4,500 to 5,000 students, so a little different scale than ASU. But I think we initially started similar to what Karen and Nicolette were describing, of building like self-service tools and looking at that. But we pivoted fairly early on to trying to build some tools that would really free up people to be able to spend more human-to-human time. And so we were looking at what processes are people doing that are taking up their time that could be done more behind the scenes, use AI to do that, that then would really free up the people to have more human-to-human connections with the students there. And we found that's been a very successful strategy. So I think that's one pillar of our strategy. And the other is really using AI to gain more insights. And something I can talk about in more depth in a little while, but I really feel that AI gives us, maybe for the first time, a tool that can really look at the totality of the student experience and really understand the student in a way that we haven't been able to before. And I'm really excited about that because I think that has a real potential to move the needle for student success and student experience.
Yeah, definitely. So Dave, I've heard you speak in the past about a magical word called pilot. And I know that you've done quite a few pilots around different uses of AI. So when you're determining, what to pilot, how are you defining what problems AI should solve versus where human support must remain central?
So in a way, that's two different questions. So pilot was something that I do think is a magical word because it allows you to do something and not have it be perfect. Because people go, okay, it's just a pilot, and allows you to experiment. Now, obviously, you have to pick your use cases there, and make sure you're doing so in a safe way, and not providing wrong advice and things like that. But through that pilot lens, we started experimenting really early on, like right after ChatGPT 3.5 sort of came out and sort of launching this new era. And people were just experimenting and trying some things. And then as some of those experiments started to hold some promise, we did more formal pilots. So we piloted a chatbot. We piloted some other tools. And some of those never went to production, but we learned a lot from the pilot. And then we use that knowledge to then really build some things that have been very valuable after the pilot. And to your second part of that question about human-centered, so Ithaca is really about the personal connections. That's one of the reasons why people come to an Ithaca-size institution. And so we wanted from the start to make sure that it was about that and not about the technology. So we even have in our guiding principles right up front, it's that, we want to make sure that all of the technology, whether it's AI or other, really supports or enhances the human experience, the human to human, doesn't replace. And to date, that has held true. And so we don't want it to replace the advising that a student might get from a faculty member or from an academic support center. We want to enhance. We want to free up our support staff to spend more time with the student, or maybe provide supplemental information there. And so that is the lens through which we're looking at all of the major projects.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Nicola is probably pretty similar for you, but anything to share about how you kind of walk through AI versus human support?
Yeah, I think we're similar at ASU, where we are really focused on what we call principled innovation, where we're really making sure that we are using AI to really help improve student success, but also still maintain that human component and also maintain responsibility that we have to students and transparency, quite frankly. So I think for me in my role, I work with our student-facing teams that are really supporting students all the way through their student journey. And a big focus of our team is essentially building that relationship very early, even before students begin their courses with us, because we know that especially for our online student population, that sense of belonging is very important. That sense of feeling like someone there cares about me, that I'm not just another number, is tremendously important. And so we've been really focused on some of the similar things that you've mentioned in terms of removing some of the administrative tasks for our staff that are supporting students. But we also have been measured and very careful about what we are putting in front of students when it comes to AI, because we want to make sure that we are maintaining that feeling of what it's like to be a Sun Devil. We just had a graduation and we had our online student event, and we had students from all over the country come in, and they wanted to meet their success coach that they had worked with throughout their program. And so that connection and relationship is so important. But we have really looked at this from a standpoint of how do we preserve that really important connection and relationship but still be able to scale support without just continually, hiring hundreds of people. But how do we work smarter and free up our coaches to really be present with a student and not be multitasking all of the administrative pieces that they need to attend to? And what can we put in front of students, whether that's a chatbot on a website that's answering some pretty basic transactional questions, but as those questions get more complex, we sort of levy them over to a human. So there's a very careful dance here, and we've been very particularly careful about how we are maintaining trust and not disrupting sort of a very human-centered design that we have across the university.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So, Nicolette, we're finding at Ithaca that there is a subset of students that are strongly opposed to AI. And, I've been reading about commencement addresses across the country where some of the speakers were talking about AI, they'd actually get booed, there. So, some of it's a generational thing. And it's interesting, though, because, from one step removed, you'd think, well, technology, people want to use it and that. But AI has this very strong reaction, I think, from people. So we're finding that we're not talking about AI very much in terms of, oh, yeah, use the AI tool or something like that. So we might send out an automated thing, but then direct people to go talk with an advisor or things like that. What do you find, and I don't mean to sort of take over this, but you're mentioning this. What are you finding at ASU? Are students embracing AI, or are some are going like, no, I don't want to use that?
Yeah, I think we see sort of a variety across not only our students, but also our staff too, which I'm sure you all are experiencing. And so I think that we have a lot of guardrails in place in terms of how we've approached innovating through AI at ASU that I think quells some of the concerns that folks have. But I'll tell you, recently we launched a course this semester that was taught by Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas. And he was teaching students how to build their agentic AI selves. So it was very, very interesting. But I think that one of the things that was really fundamental to that partnership between ASU and Will.i.am was the sort of common belief that there needs to be responsibility and sort of guiding principles as we're endeavoring into some of these as we're working with AI. And so I think that helped quite a bit. But I know that many of the students were sort of unsure before going into that course what it would be like. And so I think a lot of this that we see with our staff, with our students, is sort of a lot of fear. And so how can we help people take sort of measured steps to sort of dip their toe in the water and get a little bit of experience and start to feel a little bit more comfortable? But also many of our AI tools are within sort of a protected ecosystem of ASU. Mm-hmm. So if I'm uploading, student data to Codex, for example, and asking it to analyze something for me, it's an ASU constituted tool that I know is safe and that isn't sharing student information out into the ether. And so those sort of important safe ecosystems of using some of these tools, I think, is also really important.
If I could add a couple of additional comments, I really liked, David, your description of experiment to pilot, and then pilot to go or don't go, but also think that as leaders we have to think about how many pilots in what areas and how there's this proliferation of pilots or this disconnected approach to pilots that I think AI can proliferate if we're not careful. I mean, without AI, we were proliferating in that direction with some of our redesign and interventions of the student experience. The second thing I'd say is around the human-centered design. I did a couple of weeks ago, I was on a campus and facilitated a design thinking exercise, human-centered design around how to make academic supports like tutoring inescapable for all students. And it was, a lot of people engaged, a lot of movement, a lot of really good ideas. And then we got to the point, okay, let's prototype this. And that's when the conversation started about how can we use AI and what should the guardrails be around what we want that inescapable student experience to look like and how we're going to apply AI. And the team decided that, AI would, and they'd use AI to answer routine questions to help with making the navigation of the experience a little bit more smooth, to help them respond faster, but then not to replace any of the human interaction. So they built into that design thinking exercise, the staff and the administrative team, faculty, there were some students in that room too, their own parameters. And I think, getting to that trust piece, that's part of building that trust, that you as a leader, you're showing the way forward around helping them to define the kind of the guardrails around the use of AI.
Yeah, so interesting. I would love to hear, I mean, we've been kind of talking about a lot of different examples, but I want to get real concrete, and maybe you could each share a concrete example where AI has improved like a specific student support process. Maybe Karen, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, I'll give a real easy one, and that would be within the context of taking care of some student onboarding needs during the admissions process, especially with community colleges and so many re-entering adult students and credits that they're bringing into the student experience or into the experience that they want transcripted, and the ability to use AI tools to replace what used to be, and I started my career doing transcript evaluations way back, paper, the books, the catalogs, all of that, where an AI tool can help to get probably up to 90% accuracy on some of those transcript evaluations, as long as, and this gets to the data, the data governance issues, as long as the data quality and everything is set up in the system accurately, that you can get to that. And what that helps is a student then applies, and especially adult students, they get a response immediately. They know what credits are transcripted in, if they go into a degree pathway or not, and they can get right to their academic schedule building much faster, even before they meet with an advisor potentially, to get that process started. And that's really important. That time is important. And we don't want students losing those credits. We want them to be able to put those credits toward a degree. So with all of the national work around getting all these adult students or students who have credits but no college degree or no credential, let's call it a credential, I think there's a lot of opportunity for AI in something as simple as a practice in transcript evaluation.
Oh yeah, transcript evaluation has been such an enormous pain point, I feel like, for so long. It's just an amazing place to see AI help out. Nicolette, how about you?
Yeah, so our success coaching teams and our enrollment coaching teams, they are most of their interaction with students is over the phone, at a time that most people don't want to talk on the phone. Students want to talk to their coaches on the phone all the time because it's such an important relationship. And so there is, as if you've ever worked as a forward-facing student support role at any university, there is a tremendous amount of sort of detail gathering that you're constantly doing, because students interact with a lot of different people at the university. And so a lot of these conversations, over time, we would listen to things and maybe listen to a coaching conversation with a student and say, oh, we missed this one point about a hold they had on their account that we could have resolved in that call. And some of it is because that forward-facing staff is just, they're looking through multiple applications while they're talking to the student and trying to be present with them. And so we've actually engaged a couple different tools leveraging AI. So one is a tool that we've used where it actually creates, when that call comes in from the student, it actually immediately creeps for what are the most recent interactions, what are the most prevalent, most relevant things pertaining to that student and their ability to persist. And it creates a quick summary for that coach as that call comes in, so that they can remain present with the student without having to click around and read notes and half listen. Sometimes it's a really challenging job. So we've implemented that, as well as we have an AI tool that actually creates what we call an auto summary. So maybe you have a 30-minute appointment with that student, and at the end of that appointment as a coach, you might have to then spend a lot of time drafting your notes and documenting it so you're aware of what's going on with that student for the next time that you talk. Well, we have an auto summary tool that does it automatically for them. And we've gotten to a place that it's incredibly accurate, and it allows for that coach to really stay present with the student and move to the next student very seamlessly within seconds, honestly. And it has improved not only their awareness and their ability to reference what occurred last time, but it has also improved their own sense and how they feel about their jobs, and it's improved their sort of quality of work. So it's been really a tremendous tool. So some things connected to our phones. We've done a lot of exploration with that. We also have all of our calls are recorded because we do a lot of coaching and training around effective coaching behaviors. And so we've actually had one of our managers, it's absolutely incredible. She built a bot that essentially goes through and takes the transcripts of calls and is able to point out, here are some of the areas where in this call, our sort of effective coaching behaviors were demonstrated, or here's something for next time when you speak with the student, this would be a great opportunity to address this with that student and their trajectory. So there's a lot of work that's been done around just how we're interacting in real time with students that have been incredibly effective for us.
Yeah, at our recent Tech Tactics in Education virtual conference, there was a speaker that was kind of laying out different roles for AI, and one of them was scribe, to basically take care of that tedious documentation. And in her context, it was about like cybersecurity stuff. So many like applications across, student support, but also IT and security and all that. So interesting. Okay, Dave, how about a concrete example from you?
Sure. Well, first, we're doing a lot of similar things that Nicolette, you described. One other benefit of that transcription is we found that people, the counselors or the service reps, they say they're able to lean in more in the actual conversation and the interaction with the student because they're not worried about taking notes anymore. So it frees them up. And that was an unexpected benefit of that the quality of the human to human increases. But the example I want to talk about is very similar to what you were describing, in that we have a group on campus. They're called iCare, but basically they are social workers. They work with students that are showing signs of distress. So it's not academic necessarily, but challenges with their roommate, or they don't feel like a sense of belonging. They haven't met their people yet, or things like that. And anyone can refer someone to the iCare team, and the iCare team, triages or has a rubric, and then they identify the most critical students, and those students are recommended to meet with a counselor. And we know, we have studies that empirically show that students that are in that critical category that actually can meet with a human end up retaining at a significantly higher level than those that are in that high risk category but aren't able to meet with a human. So the iCare team came to cabinet and said, we need more counselors. We show this, but we didn't have money to do that. So then they turned to IT and they said, can you help us with this problem? And so we ended up developing an AI tool that doesn't replace the human to human. So it's not like a tool for the students to meet with, but what the tool does is it provides that background information that Nicolette was talking about. It turns out that the iCare counselors were spending an hour a day doing research on the students before they would meet with the students. They would go to all these different systems. And so the AI tool summarizes this in a way that makes sense to them, and then they can go in and have the deeper conversation with the student. And so we studied that. And last academic year, the counselors were able to have 150 additional meetings that they would not have been able to have if it wasn't for that tool. And then we know, because of the increased retention rates, those 150 additional meetings led to the retention of 8 additional students, which at Ithaca means about $288,000 of net tuition revenue, which is great from a financial perspective, but even more importantly, those students got to continue their educational journey. And so that's a way that we are sort of able to use AI, I think, in a very responsible way. And also we're able to quantify the ROI, which is something that's been hard for us to do. But with this use case, because we had done a couple of different studies before we had the AI tool, we're actually able to put dollars to it and impact. And so now, again, just like what you're doing at ASU, we're taking that concept and we're spreading it around. So other offices that meet with the students, they're able to now get this, I call it the longitudinal view of the student. They can see all aspects that are appropriate for their role about the student before they meet with it. And we think it's a very powerful way to use this technology.
I think it's really striking that like all of your examples were very human-centered, where the AI is really helping the human first, and then freeing up the human to, better impact the student. Okay, so I also think that hearing about failures is equally important. So I'm very curious if you had an example of something that really looked promising with AI and really didn't deliver. Karen, I'm going to throw that one to you first.
I really thought through this one, and I'm going to go more not specific, but higher order, kind of maybe more vague. And this is a faculty story, but I think is important because it does connect to the goals around student belonging and the student success work. So what I see working right now at a lot of our Achieving the Dream colleges is a lot of what I'll call organic faculty conversations and experimentation with the use of AI in some safe spaces, sometimes created by their teaching and learning centers. And a lot of persuasion, peer persuasion, faculty to faculty, early adopters now convincing later adopters to begin to experiment with AI, and using a lot of use cases as to why. We do know students are ahead of faculty, right? So we have a lot of work to do with faculty. So I see a lot of success there. Those conversations are exciting and taking off everywhere. What I see not working within that same context is that the colleges themselves, from maybe it's an institutional strategy perspective, are lagging in their perspectives to support the faculty in moving from that organic conversation to something more substantial and meaningful and strategic for the student, and something that the student then would trust. And that lack of AI strategy, I think, is stifling the ability for many of our colleges to really move forward with an energetic and comprehensive approach to AI. So, for example, there may not be, in many of our institutions, community colleges, there's still not an AI policy that begins to even put some guardrails. And faculty want that. They want that, but it's hard to put those in place. And I'd love to know from my colleagues if as we get further into the governance, maybe those governance structures and the architecture, the structure of strategy for AI is something that we don't spend enough time talking about, and we are going right to some of the tactics, and they're not situated within a larger and broader idea for why we're using the AI.
Man, governance, that's like one of my favorite topics. It's so important. I mean, yeah, I'm not being sarcastic. But anyway, anything for you, Nicolette, that you thought would be promising but didn't work out?
Yeah, I think we all sort of went into this thinking it was such a plug and play, easy transition. And like that, I think like we did a lot of discovery work around different tech companies that were offering voice AI. I think that's something that we haven't necessarily found the thing that we felt like was accurate enough for students. I think one of the challenges that we also ran into is that one, the voices sound kind of strange, but we found that they couldn't replicate a lot of the nuances that come up for students. And so, you know, as a center full of support teams, we have a lot of resources. We use an application called Guru for a lot of, while coaches are on a call and they have a question about something, they can search in this database for all of the information they need to know about ASU. And that has been built over time. And so, you know, it's not just as easy as saying, okay, AI, read everything that we have and now you're a coach. Like it doesn't work. It's not accurate. It's not able to understand all of the nuances and all of the background information that a coach would know about an ASU student's experience. And so I think that while we've explored a lot of it, we didn't feel like it was able to ingest all of the information that it would need to ingest to really support that student in a way that we felt comfortable. And it just didn't feel good enough for what we expect from a student experience standpoint.
And Dave, any experiments that failed to become pilots?
Sure. And sorry, they decided to mow the lawn right outside my window. So sorry about that. Again, similar to what Nicolette was describing. So we're creating a chat agent for our IT service desk. And we have all these knowledge bases that we've developed over time that our human service desk agents use. And we're thinking, oh, this is going to be really easy. We'll just point the AI to that. We have all the sources. Well, it turns out that clean data isn't necessarily AI clean data. And it's like, we were relying on human context and assumptions and knowledge in ways that we didn't realize it. As we were writing the knowledge base articles and things. And so we never went live with that initial project because even though the knowledge base was good enough for the humans, they were bringing so much knowledge to the equation that it didn't work for the AI. So we actually used AI to actually help clean up the knowledge base to make it better for this. And we narrowed the scope, and we have actually a very effective tool for printing help. And it's a more narrow service area, but it's actually rather complex given the number of printers and the different configurations and stuff. And so it's been a good test case. But the lesson learned was clean data is not necessarily the same as AI clean data.
Yeah,
we're living very parallel lives, Dave.
Yes, I know. I think I know Kyle, and I think probably, it's like rubbing off a little bit the ASU Ithaca there.
Like Nicolette, you mentioned earlier having good data behind one of your tools. So how did you make that happen?
Yeah, I think that, I'll give an example of the bot that we created to evaluate coaching behaviors and calls. That was like, honestly, I think there's a big piece of this of a lot of testing involving our frontline staff getting a lot of feedback. So we have done, I think for a lot of the tools that we've implemented for our coaches, the reason why we implemented some of these and these ended up being at the table with us was really because of getting their feedback about their experience as coaches and what could we do to improve their experience and their ability to support students. So I think one, we involved them in the solution. So first, like all of these solutions that we've implemented have come from what they have asked us for, but we also have engaged them in the process and gotten their feedback along the way. Done a lot of testing, a lot of vetting before we've implemented, and held a lot of pilot groups and had a bunch of Slack channels and a lot of communication around a lot of these pieces. So I think it's never a good idea to develop something and then just like push it out to your staff. It should be that by the time it's getting pushed out to your staff, they're all aware of it. They've been part of the build. They've vetted it. They feel comfortable. So there's a really important sort of change management process that has to happen there, and a lot of testing and vetting.
Yeah, for sure. Karen, have you encountered any challenges with building, that necessary data infrastructure?
Oh, yes. We're known in our network for really helping colleges to get on a data discovery path so that they can. We talked earlier about understanding your students in deeper ways. So they can understand their students, understand the data about where their gaps in the student experience might be, all of their key metric data. But the challenges in that journey, I think, are going to be compounded when we lay AI on top of our approaches. And I think we're alluding to that a little bit. I mean, fragmented systems and siloed data, trying to pull that together, inconsistent data quality within that. There's really in the community college sector and perhaps in other sectors of higher education, there's really limited institutional capacity in the IT and institutional research and institutional effectiveness areas to really support the kind of infrastructure that we need. And it is hard for us culturally sometimes to shift thinking from being focused on collecting and understanding compliance data to understanding the data that is real-time dynamic student data. And we try to help our colleges create a data lake that connects all of that data. And ideally then it would be great if AI can be put on top of that and help users create then dynamic views where they can express their curiosity using an AI tool that's embedded in that to ask questions about the student experience. And I think, Nicolette, you're kind of describing that with the coaching experience. If we could get to that level of data fluency in our colleges where faculty and staff would have the ability to ask those questions about students, of course, with all the data governance structures around it, that to me would be the ultimate way to use AI. If we can really use the AI to understand our students in the deeper ways that we need to, and we can build a common understanding of our students through the use of AI and everybody's use of AI. It's just, right now we really are struggling in the community college sector to get to that point. And we're not really talking a lot about the vendor community and the temptation to purchase a lot of technology to solve these very specific areas where we have friction and gaps, all with embedded AI in them, and our institutional ability to really understand what are the implications. You put that on top of it, and I think the architecture gets even more complicated.
Can I build on that? Just I think Karen, what you're describing is spot on in terms of some of the challenges. I really worry as an IT professional that I'm being marketed daily by all of these siloed solutions. And it's a point solution for enrollment. It's a point solution for student success. It's a point solution for housing. And our students aren't point solutions. They experience the institution holistically. And we decided probably about a year and a half ago that we already have we're fortunate, we have a very rich analytics infrastructure. We have a lot of central data. And so we are building our AI on top of that data so that we can have, again, I call it the longitudinal view of the student. We know how they are experiencing the institution in different places so that we can build that. And I think that is ultimately what is going to prove to be the most powerful use of AI, is to support and to have that. But I really worry that institutions that may not have that infrastructure, or may not have the resources to do that, are buying these narrow solutions that are going to solve problems. I'm not saying they don't help, but in the long run, I actually think they impede the ability to get that broad picture of the student, so that the student doesn't have to tell their story multiple times, and so that when our Student Financial Services Office is dealing with a student, they actually can see things that can help them in ways that they weren't able to before. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I really love that line. Students are not point solutions. That's a great one. I'm going to steal and use later. So, Karen, earlier you mentioned governance, and I definitely want to get to my favorite topic. Could you share what you've learned about, building governance frameworks for AI?
I think that we know a lot about building data governance frameworks for data in maybe an old way that we describe it. And I think we're all learning what it might mean to have data governance that is AI infused. So maybe the group could kind of riff on that a little bit. How does that look different, and what needs to be emphasized maybe in different ways? I mean, the whole approach around data governance and ethical governance, and how through governance you are more transparent, and you make human support more visible, or at least the value around human support more visible within your governance policies and structures, I think is really going to be important. And then another thing that I would say in a governance framework that centers AI, especially with student supports, is how do we embed in the governance structure equity considerations? I mean, we want to make sure that we are not further widening the gaps in student access to our colleges, student access to certain programs in our colleges, student access to supports, because of the way that we use AI. And that what keeps me up at night is that piece. So how do you create a governance structure that gets at that, at what could be those big equity issues that we do face using AI, whether we can use the word equity or not, depending on what our context is.
Yeah. Dave, how has data governance changed with the advent of AI?
Well, we still have a ways to go. I wouldn't say that we are mature. I think we are maturing in terms of our data governance and our governance of the AI. I think that, we made the move probably about 4 years ago to bring our analytics team and institutional research team in with IT. So it's one organization. So we have the people who know the data, know how to work with the data, and can analyze the data all in one team. And I think that has helped us identify issues around data. And the governance piece of that is that it really turned data into an institutional asset. And I think that was sort of a fundamental start there. But we have more work to do on this. I mean, I think especially around transparency, around ensuring that our students understand how we are using data to help support them. We are trying to be incredibly thoughtful and respectful for how we are using data to inform the AI tools. But I think it's an ongoing process here.
Yeah, Nicolette, you want to chime in?
Yeah, we have a lot of we have a lot of ASU specific vetted AI tools that we can use, and so that's been really helpful. I think the thing that I think about honestly most is sort of the, for lack of a better term, like some of the data inferences that people can make that's sort of like an AI slop of sorts. So I've found like when you're, sometimes people that aren't as data savvy, let's say, might be leveraging an AI tool to assess data. The AI tools are great and helpful in making some inferences, but they're not always accurate. And so the accuracy of that analysis is concerning sometimes. I think, especially when you're looking at it from a qualitative standpoint, like my personal experience is that when we look at qualitative data through an AI lens, it can tell you these are the things that we're hearing. Like, here are the top 5 things I'm hearing in this qualitative data. But it can't tell you sort of the velocity of which it's hearing that. So you may hear the 4 or 5 different things, but one thing is actually your biggest issue. And so I think sort of it's great that everyone is participating and getting their hands in AI, and we're using it for all of these great things. But I think that we also have to be very careful about what inferences we're making, and that we're not sort of just saying, well, this is what the AI told me. This is accurate. This is correct. Like, we have to make sure that any messaging or any decisions that we're making around strategy, that is actually fully vetted, and that's not just, we're not just taking what AI tells us and actioning on it without really being careful about what messaging we're buying from whatever AI is producing.
I want to just put a big exclamation point on that. I like the way you called it AI slop. I almost feel like we've done so much work with our network colleges on data literacy, kind of the 1.0 version before AI. Now we have to go back and think about what's the 2.0 version of that data literacy professional learning look like, and that it has to include addressing the AI slop and the inferences that are made from AI, or just flat out. I was in a meeting recently with a college where I was presented with research findings that were right out of AI and not logically tested against the context within which we were sitting at that moment. I think we're all short-staffed. We're working fast. We're working hard, and the temptation then is to lean on AI in a way that we all have to kind of pause and say, first of all, should we be using AI to build this data insight? Should we outsource that data insight to AI? I don't think so. But really good point, Nicolette.
I also think it's really important to define AI and define the use case, because AI means different things to different people. And there's, at one end of the spectrum, maybe one end, I don't know, is using like ChatGPT and just cut and pasting data. Maybe at the other end is, purpose-built and tested institutional applications that have deep connections to institutional data, have a lot of science around it, a lot of thought. And those are both AI tools that have very different issues involved with it. One's more ad hoc. The layperson is using it and interpreting, and for a lot of people, that's AI when they think about it. And then there are the tools that we were describing that have, been developed and tested and piloted and whatever, and have been proven to provide value in a controlled way. And I worry that a lot of the dialogue or even rhetoric around AI is too broad brush, and that people say, oh, it's bad, oh, it's not accurate, or whatever. It's like, well, which use case are you talking about? And I think we really have to be much more nuanced and intentional about the use cases and maybe the controls or thought that went into developing those solutions.